Videocards.com is claiming to have an absolutely massive leak regarding the performance of the 9070 and 9070 XT. They're claiming to have AMD's official figures reporting an average of 30 plus games, claiming the 9070 XT is 42% faster on average than a 7900 GRE at 4K. But this is split down into much more granular detail than that, and they have some evidence that you should believe these rumors. Again, like Videocards.com would have a lot of reputation on the line for this as well. So if they posted something like this claiming it's AMD's official numbers with tons of details, and then it wasn't, that would obviously damage their credibility significantly. So that's one reason to believe this. They also have what appears to be a screenshot from what looks to be AMD's style of branding on their marketing slide presentations with this figure on it. So Radeon RX 9070 XT 42% faster, average across 30 plus games, versus 7900 GRE at 4K settings. Videocards.com is saying that they sent their best agents to gather intel, and the mission was a success. So they're also saying, well, why is it not being compared against a 5070 Ti? Well, they're saying that AMD wouldn't have had the 5070 Ti at that point at their labs to have gathered all of that data. Remember, we're expecting AMD's official presentation on February 28th, so perhaps we'll get that direct comparison at that time. Now, the 7900 GRE is not the only comparison point, and we also have information for the 9070 non-XT. Also, it's important to note that this appears to be averaging both non-ray tracing and ray tracing results, and they do have it split out by 1440p and 4K. Also, while it says this is a result of an average of 30 plus games, if you count this is not 30 plus games. So it doesn't seem to be showing every single game that was part of this data set. So some information there it does appear to be unavailable. Now, we're going to analyze this a bit. I think it's important, though, the fact that this is averaging RT and non-RT when we try to get into comparison points. Because if we just jump straight into like a Tech Power Up relative performance chart, set the 7900 GRE as the baseline, and then try to say, okay, so the 7900 XTX is about 37% faster, and they're claiming, 42% faster at 4K, well, that would put it faster than a 7900 XTX. But again, I'm pretty sure that Tech Power Up's relative performance chart is built off of non-RT results. Because, for example, they have the 7900 XTX slightly ahead of a 4080 Super in this chart, whereas if you had it heavily weighted on ray tracing performance, the 7900 XTX would have been noticeably slower than a 4080 Super. And ray tracing performance can be all over the place depending on the game, because some games use a lot of ray tracing, some use a little, some ray tracing workloads work better on AMD than others for a variety of reasons. So that's where I think we do need to maybe be careful here, because if you do look at this, AMD has claimed that they're making big advances in ray tracing performance specifically for this generation. It does look like in their non-RT, so if you look at this chart, you've got the non-RT results, and then below that you have a bunch of RT results split out that way. If you look at the largest percentage gains for both the 9070 and the 9070 XT, the largest percentage gains are certainly in this ray tracing section. So this does point to AMD being delivered on, at least in their own first-party testing. So that's the other elephant in the room here, is even if this is AMD's official results, this is not independent third-party testing. This would then mean, again, that it does look like they're delivering on that increased ray tracing performance and increased rasterized performance, but more on the ray tracing side. So when you look at that full average, keeping that in mind, so does that mean that it's actually going to perhaps be slower than a 7900 XTX in non-ray tracing, but faster in ray tracing and put it on average a little bit ahead, right? And exactly by how much in what game. So there's a lot more going on here. Further evidence that the increased ray tracing performance is likely true actually comes from the PlayStation 5. A while back, I talked about the PlayStation 5 Pro technical seminar given by Sony's Mark Cerny, where they talked about the advantages for ray tracing in the hardware for the PS5 Pro versus the PS5. And they claimed that this was mostly from taking RDNA 4 ray tracing advancements and putting it into their custom GPU, which isn't fully RDNA 4, on the PlayStation 5 Pro. They say that one of the biggest upgrades is in the BVH acceleration structure going to BVH8 versus BVH4. Because then the intersection engine can do twice as many triangles, basically twice as efficient at this. So the older version was rays versus 4 boxes, rays versus 1 triangle, whereas the new intersection engine would be up to a max per cycle of 8 boxes and 2 triangles. Now, if you don't understand what's going on with BV8 structures, actually that presentation had a pretty good visual of this. So when you're deciding if a ray hits something, you group the geometry into boxes, and then you decide, does the ray hit a box? If it does hit a box, you then look inside that box, which has further broken down into boxes, and does it hit that box? If it hits that box, what's inside of that box? Does it hit something in there? And eventually you get down to the more granular level of detail each time. So you can see that if there are notice that this box has 4 boxes inside of it, and then each box it hits then has 4 boxes inside of it. That would be much less efficient than if you were hitting a box that had 8 boxes inside of it. So this is likely where a lot of, but probably not all of, the increased ray tracing performance for RDNA 4 is coming from. Anyway, so with that in mind, we can break down this information a little more carefully, right? So if you're looking at the non-RT results, which kind of breaks off here, it's looking like we're seeing the 90, if we want to focus right here, this would be the 9070 XT versus the 7900 GRE. It looks like we're seeing a range of results at 1440p from 23% faster up to about 44% faster. So perhaps in ray tracing, in non-ray tracing performance, maybe the average is closer to a 30-ish% uplift. Again, though, we're probably not seeing the full list of games here, so it's possible that this was chunked off at a certain point. You see what I'm saying? Like this is first-party data, and we're not actually seeing the whole data set. But maybe that would be one way to break that down. Also, the 4K numbers do look a bit different, where they're going 23% up to, looks like the biggest leads are maybe around 48% or so here. But again, if we then kind of reined in our expectations a little bit and said it's a 30-something% uplift, but maybe not 42% uplift in non-ray tracing performance, that would still put it well above a 7900 XT, but probably a little below a 7900 XTX in non-ray tracing performance. But then if you look at ray tracing performance, it looks like the results, at 4K are ranging from 36% to 66% faster in ray tracing workloads. So that would likely put it well above the 7900 XTX in ray tracing performance. However, again, game by game, these things can vary kind of wildly. Interestingly, it does look like the heavier ray tracing workloads are seeing the larger gains. Like Cyberpunk 2077 is generally a difficult ray tracing workload for AMD GPUs, and here they're showing 66% faster than the 7900 GRE, which is much above the overall average and better than some of the other ray tracing results. Now that's interesting. Again, part of that could be accounted for by things like this BVH8 structure being more useful. But also in the PS5 Pro presentation, where again, he's talking about the RDNA 4 ray tracing improvements, he talks about the difficulty that the older RDNA had dealing with very divergent workloads, where if everything's bouncing off a flat surface and going nicely, things weren't as difficult as if it bounces off a curved or bumpy surface. And then he talked about the fact that the PS5 Pro has some enhancements that especially help in that type of workload. So anyway, the point is we already have some information that the more difficult workloads could be improved more than the average because of the better ability to deal with this type of ray tracing situation. Again, that's coming from the PlayStation 5 information, but they were specifically talking about the RDNA 4 advancements that were pulled into the PS5 Pro GPU. Anyway, so we focused a lot here on the 9070 XT, but what about the 9070? If you compare that against the 7900 GRE, it looks like they are showing in the, overall averages 20% faster at 1440p and 21% faster at 4K. But again, a reminder that the larger improvements seem to be happening in the ray tracing workloads, and less of a performance jump in the non-RT workloads. Looks like the non-RT workloads at 1440p ranging from a 4% to looks like the biggest being about a 26% uplift. Whereas in the ray tracing workloads, looks like we're seeing anywhere from a 12 to a 38% uplift. So again, bigger jumps in RT. So if we hop back to TechPowerUp's relative performance chart, and this time we're focusing on the 7900 GRE plus about 20%, if we go off the average, right? They're averaging about a 20% jump. Well, that would put you at about the 7900 XT, maybe a little bit faster. So 7900 XT, TechPowerUp has it about 18% faster. But again, with that split in generational uplift between ray tracing and non-ray tracing, it's looking like we would expect the 9070 non-XT to probably be a little bit less performant than a 7900 XT in non-ray tracing, but probably more performant in ray tracing. So that's interesting. Again, we'll need a lot more, granular split and independent third-party reviews and all of that. But that seems to be how we should probably interpret this data set based off of what we have to go off of here. Again, looking like the larger improvements are in RT. Now, one of the big questions here is also, why are they focusing so much on the 7900 GRE as a comparison point? And, honestly, there's not a specific answer. One could be that, well, maybe that would be the price point that they're targeting. It's literally not given here why this is the comparison point. And as far as we can tell here, there has been no leaked pricing information. There's actually some tweets, I don't have them pulled up here, where I think I saw a tweet where Hardware Unboxed even said that AMD had actually reached out to them for their opinion on what the pricing should be. So we don't know exactly what date that conversation took place, meaning it's possible AMD is still unsure what pricing they want to target, but I think they know that they need to be priced somewhat aggressively. So perhaps they're thinking about 7900 GRE-ish pricing, but they're comparing both the 9070 and the 9070 XT up against the 7900 GRE. So does that mean that one's a little bit below and one's a little bit above? It's hard to say, right? Now, what was 7900 GRE pricing? Well, you can't buy them in stock new right now, but their MSRP was $550 once they hit a global launch. So I'm curious what you guys think about that, because again, we don't have pricing with this, because as far as we can see here, it looks like they're going to have something that is similar to what they already had, a 7900 XT and a 7900 XTX, although maybe a bit better in ray tracing and maybe even a bit slower in rasterized, so there does seem to be a different split. And there's FSR 4, maybe a better upscaler. So there's a lot of stuff going here, but it looks like, something in the ballpark of a 7900 XT and XTX. So what kind of pricing would they need to hit for that performance to make sense? Because honestly, that's good performance. It can play a lot of games super well. But is it? But it's only a good product or a good value at that performance if the price is right. So I'm interested in the comment sections. If we were getting a 9070 that is, better at ray tracing than a 7900 XT, but maybe a little bit slower and rasterized, what price would make you want to buy that, right? And 9070 XT. If this is similar to a 7900 XTX, maybe a little slower in rasterized, but a bit faster in ray tracing, again, what price would make you want to buy that? Because again, they're up against the 50 series. The 50 series, well, the 5070 Ti is right around that 7900 XTX kind of situation. It's maybe a bit slower in rasterized performance, so honestly, that could mean that the 9070 XT would be right around there in rasterized performance. But the 5070 Ti is a lot better than the 7900 XTX in heavy ray tracing workloads. Maybe the 9070 XT closes some of that gap. Does it close all of that gap? It might depend on which ray tracing workload you're looking at. But it looks like it, performance-wise, will be targeting a 5070 Ti. Those have an MSRP of $750, but an actual real-world pricing way above that. Does AMD price against the real-world pricing, or do they price against the MSRP aggressively? And I don't think they could just match the MSRP if they're pricing against MSRP. I think it has to be lower, right? Now with the the 9070 non-XT, again, if that's somewhere in the 7900 XT ballpark, that's interesting because that's near a 4070, Ti. It's a bit above it. In other words, where is the 5070 going to fall relative to this? The 5070 is supposed to be faster than a 4070, but not much faster than maybe like a 4070 Super. So does the 9070 actually have a pretty big performance advantage against the 5070? That would be interesting at that $550 price point, but where would the 9070 price point fall? Again, there's a lot going on here. By the way, there are some other information given versus other products. So they also have the 9070 XT compared versus the 6900 XT, probably for the purpose of if somebody was wanting to upgrade from a 6000 series GPU, so you bought the high-end 6000 series GPU, where does the 9070 XT land? Well, they're claiming 51% faster at 4K, but again, with that average of both RT and non-RT results. We also have the 9070 non-XT compared against the 6800 XT, and they're claiming a 38% performance improvement versus 6800 XT at 4K max settings. So, interesting stuff. Again, all of this is leaked information, claiming to be AMD's official information. Like I said, it does seem like videocards.com has some evidence of that with this, what appears to be a screenshot of an AMD presentation and all of that. But again, always take everything with a grain of salt. And again, even if it is AMD's official information, sometimes their official slides line up super well with reality. We've seen some of their CPU slides especially where they kind of didn't. So this is still definitely not independent testing and all of that. But this is certainly interesting. Like I said, without a price point, you can't really evaluate the product. If these came out at $100, this will be the best value GPU of all time. If these come out at $1,000, this would be a massive disappointment. I think if, we got the 9070 XT at like $500, that would be extremely exciting. At $600, is that okay? At $700, I feel like you're way too close to the 5070 Ti. So like I said, I'm interested in what you guys think in the comment section, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.